Tihei Mauriora, kia ora and welcome to this series of Vision Wānanga, an insight into the past of one of New Zealand's largest tertiary institutions. Here we will explore and discover the history of the Wānanga Aotearoa and delve into the minds of great pioneers and explorers whom transformed and shaped the educational landscape. Nō reira, whakapiripiri mai, whakatata mai, kia oro atu ki te hā o Tihei Wānanga.
Well, like most schools, we had Maori delinquency, and there were a lot of expulsions and suspensions, and although I have to say that when I first went there, Boy Mungu was the teacher in charge of Maori studies, and Boy was very good at working in with families and trying to get the students back on the rails. But I guess we didn't have good structures in place for dealing with Maori delinquents. No.
Nā ko mōhia kia rongo, I tērā ahuatanga, te makeretanga mai o ngā tamariki tāne, tamariki wāhina, Māori Pākehā, I taua kura. Kāre te tōtika te mahi a ngā kura nei, kia tātou.
The education system focuses on the European model, the European culture, the European language, so everything was built around that. And until that situation changed, there wouldn't be any great improvement for Māori.
A tā mai te tangi mai te waiaro. Nā haui a whao, te poho o tīpanga me tau ahe. Me mai rau ahe taketako. Me hara mai koe ki kona I te whakairo I tēnei pai. Whare tāko kai te whakatūria ki wānganui o te aomuti.
We wanted to put it in Kiki, and we were just about thrown out of the hall. By this time, Rongo had already got Paki Harrison in. He's the pauwhenua, he's the man as far as carving was concerned, and we'd been on fact-finding tours to show the people that we weren't going to build something second-rate.
When we built the wharenui at college, Patrick had taken people off the street basically and put them through a carving test of his own. And he said he would know within a few days whether a person had the skills to carve or not.
Rongo got it pushed through. Somehow, I don't know how he did it, but he talked these people into, the Board of Governors into allowing him to build this marae.
It was very challenging at the time because even banks were not supportive. At the time, there were quite a lot of negative write-ups about the project. I know that Rongo was struggling. He was struggling for funds, he was struggling for support, he was struggling for acceptance.
There was definitely racism. There is today. We shouldn't muck around with it. There is racism, but mostly it was ignorance. Ignorance, you know, lack of understanding.
There was a businessman in town who was very anti the whole marae concept and was very vocal about the whole marae concept. And he came down when it was getting towards the end and the carvings were in place and the whole thing, and he spent a lot of time going through the thing, talking to people who were working in there and so on. He said, I think this is a brilliant idea, and he wrote out a cheque for $1,000 and handed it over on the spot. So that was an example of how people's attitudes did change.
I mean, down here, the Charlestons, just down the bottom of the road here, I mean, the Charlestons, they gave the trees, they gave all the wood, all the tauira for Tāwha, or most of it.
He tapped us all on the shoulder and said, no, if you give me $1,000, I'll put a plaque up with your name on it, on one of the carvings, or one of the tukituki panels. And that was how he raised a lot of the money. It was very effective.
It was more magnificent than I ever thought it would be, and it was more magnificent than even anyone in the town. Then the town started to change. You see, you get some of the town fathers coming over, saying, "Oh, this is not too bad. Perhaps we've been a bit hasty." And at the same time, our own people coming over, "Oh, your fella's not so koretake after all. Oh, it's not bad." Oh, and then we got the whole thing behind us, you see. But we had everybody going with us then.
The first experience I had really of knowing the enormity of his plans was the opening of the Aotearoa marae, because there were huge people. I think it was a 2-day event, and the whole community was involved.
It was a terrific day because, we had fellas like Peter Tapsell, who was the Minister of something, Maori Affairs or something. We had all who they'd just wiped us, and they were all on board. And, no, it was great.
Rongo had a wager with one of his neighbours, and his neighbour said to him, "Rongo, if you can get those people in Te Wānanga to support you in what you're trying to do, like trying to build a meeting house there right in the middle of the town," he says, "I'll supply the pork for your hangi." So all of a sudden, you see, all Tāwha was up, and Rongo had won this bet, and this farmer next door provided all of the pigs, and I don't know, there was numerous.
I know we had 2,800 hangis. It was quite unusual to, way back in the 80s, to have a carved marae anywhere, and particularly one like Tāwha, which was beautifully carved by Hinemoa's family and Paki. The weaving was tremendous and still is. But it's really an example of what quality Maori arts and crafts is all about.
And then he said he wants to set up this training centre. He talked about there's going to be a lot more kids who will be expelled from the college.
And Rongo had installed us in the old dairy factory, Tamutu dairy factory, huge place. God, it was 70 feet high and lonely, cold, 1 bar heater there each.
So they created the arts and crafts place. They called it the Waipa Kokiri Centre, where our young people were able to go along there and learn skills and new skills, and create some of this beautiful artwork that we see today, and also market that artwork.
We were in the dairy factory. We were carving away there, and we had almost all of Tāwha done, and There was one or two other meeting houses too that we had on the go at the same time, you know, for funding. We didn't do it because we liked doing 3 or 4 jobs at once. We did it because we damn well had to pay the bills.
The Waipa Kōkiri Centre offered things like plumbing, drain laying, carpentry, all of those kinds of programs.
The workmen's shed, when we had our first trust meeting for whānau, or for Kōkiri Centre, we had it in the shed, and you couldn't get it from the main road unless you had a couple of songs.
It was like a pie cart and a wooden bench in it and a couple of forms, and I can tell you it was as wet and muddy all round it, and it was as cold as hell inside, so a meeting wouldn't go any more than about an hour and a half because we were all very pleased to get out of it.
And then the dairy factory said to us, well, you're going to have to get out of here. We're going to wreck it. And that put a cat amongst the pigeons. Here we are with all these, we had a sort of we had a setup there that was, we had office girls, we'd sort of started to get a little bit organised, and then we had to shift. But they said, you can take anything you want. And that was from the girders to the windows, taps, plumbing, sinks, anything that was there we could have.
We then looked at an area of land down behind the college where we are now, in Factory Road, which was then a rubbish dump.
I thought it was the end. I thought, well, we're never going to get through this one wrong. It just seemed to, no, we'll be right. And he knew a guy called Dan Harris, who was an ex-army man. I think his name was ex-AMP man. And he said, we'll go and get the wrong. I said, we'll go and get the army, and we'll get them to wreck this factory for us. And I didn't know how the hell we're going to get the army. So away we go in the old blue Mitsubishi again, another trip to Auckland. And it must have been up 300,000 miles by now. And away we go in this thing with Dan Harris.
And I had said to him, if you're going to build a school on these, you better put a life jacket on it, because I can always remember those paddocks there when the cattle used to be running around to be standing up to their knees in mud and water, and it was a shocking place. I didn't ever think it was going to be suitable for what it is today.
And finally, at the end of the day, when we're just about given hope, we're ushered into this office, Rongo, me and Dan Harris. And Dan does the thing because he's an ex-army man. And he was a Maori, luckily enough. It was, I remember I don't know whether he was a colonel, lieutenant colonel, but he was some Colonel McGregor.
I saw Henry Bennett and asked him if we could put the army up at Nurses' Home at Tokanui. And that was okay, and we did that for free. That was Tokanui Hospital and probably Henry Bennett's contribution towards at Wharenui. And we put them up there for about 3 weeks, I think.
And these guys were enjoying that work, so we were very lucky, and we had the use and the help of various people around about with trucks and things to cart a lot of the smashed up concrete over and put in a good foundation for the building areas that we were going to be on.
Challenges were enormous. The tauira at the time were undergoing social, financial, psychological disadvantages, including academic disadvantages. Many of them were leaving school somewhere along the 4th form.
And I would say within 6 or 8 months of it commencing, we started to see a tremendous difference in the discipline that they were bringing in themselves. They were starting to feel as though they belonged to something.
Then I rang Rongo up and I said, well, look, I've got some computers over here. You can have 2 or 3 if you like. How quickly can you be over here? And he said, 15 minutes. And he was. It's not a 15-minute trip, but he was very quick.
So we put those computers into the Waipa Kōkiri Arts Centre to help develop the administration. And then we were able to put 10 into a room to be our first computer class.
All of the old traditional roadworks, freezing works, all those sorts of jobs had gone, and our people all over the nation were on the dole. And so it was the right time to move them into some form of training.
We hadn't seen any evidence of any great scheme or idea coming through the normal government channels to make a difference.
So when we changed our name from Waipa Kukuri Arts Centre to the Aotearoa Institute, we really started to create a lot of firsts for New Zealand. We were the first Māori private training establishment. We were the first to be accredited with New Zealand Qualifications Authority. We were the largest work-based training provider and probably served more Māori training positions in carving and weaving and other associated arts programs.
So the programs that we introduced and became involved in were really community orientated. Waka building, weaving and carving were all projects that urban Māori needed. And so the programs were very, very popular.
I think the challenges back in Aotearoa Institute days was to try and put into practice this word manaki, kiaki, aroha, rangi maria, mana, ihi, wei. And you had to demonstrate all that.
It was such a strong sense of whānau. That family was just so strong. Everybody knew everyone.
Things like money was really tight, and it was really tight. We went for years and, without drawing any pay, those sorts of things.
There we came home one afternoon and he said that, well, Mary, Rongo has spoken with me and the banks won't give us any money to get started.